What's that, Miss Ethel? You think that Les Claypool is the Zodiac killer? Don't say that. Don't fucking say that. Salutations, my precious pachyderms. My name is Dead Girl, and this is my channel where I talk about my very niche interests, just kind of for myself, but hopefully you will enjoy it too. When I started this channel, I thought about all the things I wanted to include and do videos on. And I didn't want to just do movies or true crime or weird internet stuff. I wanted to include music too. Primus is one of my all-time favorite bands. I've loved them since I was about 13 years old, I think is when I first started getting into them. I was really obsessed with bass guitar as I was learning it, and was obsessed with funk and slap bass, and I loved everything weird and creepy. And so Primus was just like an amalgamation, whatever, of all those things that I was getting really excited about in music. So I was like, hey, why don't I go online and find an iceberg chart about Primus and do the research, and I'll make a cool video about it. But what I found out is that there was no Primus Iceberg, which I found incredible because it seems like there's an iceberg chart about any topic, and there's a really passionate fan base behind Primus. So I did what any good corpse woman would do, and I made my own iceberg chart about Primus. I've never made an iceberg chart before. This was kind of a daunting task, and it was a lot of research, and it took a lot of time, but I hope that everyone enjoys it. And if you are not a Primus fan or have never even listened to them, I think you will find this interesting too, because I just found like weird facts, and you don't have to be a fan of the band to enjoy my iceberg chart. So open up a bottle of that Kansas wine as we sail the seas of cheese. And yes, there will be mud. Level 1. So level 1 is dedicated to knowledge people might already know about Primus, even if they are not a fan of Primus. If you've lived through the 90s or have any knowledge of 90s music, there is a good chance that you will know most of the things on this level. Les Claypool. Les Claypool is one of the founding members of Primus. He plays bass and is the lead vocalist. He was born in Richmond, California on September 29th, 1963, Libra King. He started playing bass at the age of 14 and went to high school with Kirk Hammett of Metallica fame. Don't worry, we will get to it. He is usually thought to be the brains behind the operation that is Primus, but I'd argue that Brains is the true brains. Primus sucks. Primus sucks is the band motto. I always thought that this was just typical Gen X humor, but the story behind this motto is actually a little bit more wholesome than you would think. In the early days of the band, people would come to Les Claypool after shows and tell him how amazing he did. And Les, the humble king that he is, would say, "Nah, we suck." This would catch on as people would go and cheer "Primus sucks" from the audience. South Park theme. The theme song behind the iconic adult animated show South Park is written and performed by Primus. You can even see a South Park version of Les Claypool playing his bass in the opening scene of each episode. Creator and writer Matt Stone was a really big fan of Primus and actually ended up working on a few Primus projects. Wynona's Big Brown Beaver. Speaking of Wynona's Beaver, this is probably Primus's best known single, and the song that you are still most likely to hear on the radio. It was the first single from the 1995 Tales from the Punch Bowl album. This song was a huge hit. The iconic music video with the band as giant plastic cowboy figurines was played on MTV more than any of their other songs. The music video was inspired by that creepy Duracell commercial with the Putterman family. This commercial had a family that looked like vinyl plastic figurines, and they were at a barbecue, and then one of the old ladies is talking too much, so they just take out her batteries, which I'm like, did they kill her? Does that kill that woman? We'll never know. But this commercial is basically where they got the aesthetic idea for the music video. This song was nominated for a Grammy in 1996 for Best Hard Rock Performance. Unfortunately, it was beat out by Pearl Jam for their song Spin the Black Circle. Larry Lalonde was the only member of the band to attend the ceremony. The song itself is likely a reference to a woman's self-pleasure habits, and many have taken the lyrics, "She pricked her finger one day and it occurred to her that she might have a porcupine," might mean that she actually had a penis instead of a beaver, or some sort of intersex combination of genitalia. The song was met with certain controversy. Aside from the lyrical content, many people thought that the song was about Winona Ryder. Ryder herself would go on to confront the band about this possible connection. Les Claypool has clarified that the song is not about anyone specific, and he is surprised that no one has thought he's talking about Winona Judd since the song has a country western sound to it. Les Claypool's Metallica audition. Many music nerds get very excited when they get to bring up that Les Claypool was almost in Metallica. I think that the key word almost is a bit of an exaggeration, but here's the story. So after Cliff Burton's death in 1986, the band held auditions to find Metallica's new bassist. Les Claypool was friends with Metallica guitarist Kirk Hammett since they went to high school together, and he was asked to audition. Now, thrash metal was not really Les's usual sound aesthetic that he was used to, and so to break the tension during the audition, he asked them, "Hey, wanna jam to some Isley Brother tunes?" Which apparently didn't go over that well as a joke. Les was not a good fit for the group and obviously did not make the band. The Metallica frontman and Napster enjoyer, James Hetfield, has said that Les Claypool was too good and he should just do his own thing. To be honest, I think Hetfield was just being nice, and there wasn't really ever a chance that Claypool was gonna be in Metallica. I personally am so glad that Les went on to do Primus and all his other side projects instead of Metallica because, to be frank, I'm kind of in the thrash is trash camp of metal fans. But this does leave room for a lot of alternative rock history of what does it look like if Les Claypool is the bassist for Metallica. My Name is Mud. My Name is Mud is probably the most famous single off of the Pork Soda album and is well known for its dark lyrical themes. The song appears to be from the perspective of a serial killer named Mud who is easily offended and needs to get his victim in the ground before he starts to smell. Out of all the Primus songs that gained mainstream popularity, this is probably my favorite out of them. The 6-string bass riff at the beginning is just intoxicating, and the lyrics are terrifying, and the music video is disgusting. It's just perfect. Level 2. So level 2 is going to feature entries that might not be well known by non-Primus fans, but if you are a Primus fan, even a casual one, you will probably know at least a few of these. Samples. Like any band, there are many samples throughout the Primus discography. But since it's Primus, the samples become pretty weird. So here's a list of most of the samples I was able to find and where they come from. In Jerry Was a Race Car Driver, you hear Dog Will Hunt, which is from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, one of my favorite movies.
Dog Will Hunt! Get that bitch, Leatherface! Get that bitch! Dog Will Hunt!
In My Name is Mud, you can hear Where You Goin', City Boy? And this is from the 1972 movie Deliverance, which just makes that song even more terrifying to have that movie be sampled. In both John the Fisherman and To Defy the Laws of Tradition, the beginning riff from Rush's song YYZ is sampled. In Hamburger Train, you can hear, You're the guy from the hamburger train, right? This is from a 1981 Tommy Chong movie, Nice Dreams. This is actually my favorite sample, maybe of all time from any band, because it's just so silly and dumb. And I have been known to say it as a vocal stim, and I get the weirdest looks when I do. I don't know why.
You're the guy from the hamburger train, right?
Whamola. A whamola is an instrument that is played by Les Claypool in some of his side projects, and is a portmanteau of whammy bar and viola. Essentially consists of a single string strung on a long bass neck and is played by beating the string with a drumstick. Before doing the research for this video, I actually thought that Les Claypool invented this instrument, but it's just that Les Claypool is the one most associated with it, and it's actually unknown who invented this instrument. Frizzle Fry. Frizzle Fry was the first studio album released by Primus in the year 1990 and is known for being Les Claypool's favorite album from their discography. The most famous single from the album and my all-time favorite Primus song is John the Fisherman. And this did have some success on the radio and has been featured in movies and video games, as we discussed earlier. This album was well received by critics and got comparisons to Frank Zappa and Captain Beefheart. This album would make up the setlist for their 1990 North American tour, where they would be the openers for Jane's Addiction. Brian Brain Mantilla. Brian Mantilla, better known as Brain, was the drummer for Primus in 1989 and again from 1996 to 2000. He has played for a long list of successful groups such as Godflesh and Guns N' Roses. This is probably where he met Buckethead, because he was playing around the time that Buckethead took over for Slash. And we'll get into Buckethead, don't worry about that. Buckethead is the key to all of this. Brain was also in superstar groups such as Praxis, Colonel Claypool's Buckets of Bernie Brains, and most recently, Brain has been credited for working on the soundtrack for Cyberpunk 2077. Primate. Primate was the original band name when Les Claypool and guitarist Todd Huth both formed the band in 1984. They then would very soon change the name of the band to Primus. Bay Area. Primus started in the 80s and would get their start in the Bay Area of Southern California, which is fundamental of their sound and the story of their success. At the time that Primus was coming up in the Bay music scene, there was a wealth of talent in the area, with bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers and Green Day. And while Primus is certainly not the most famous of musical groups to come out of the San Francisco, Berkeley area, they are well respected among other musicians, and this might be because of them being a local band at the same time as so many other iconic groups. Larry Lair Lalonde. Larry Lalonde, or Lair, is the longest running member of Primus other than Claypool. He played guitar and did some of the backing vocals from 1989 to 2000 when the band would break up, and then again in 2003 to current day. He met Claypool during their time in the band Blind Illusion. Lair was taught guitar by one of the all-time guitar legends, Joe Satriani. And before Primus, he played guitar for the death metal band Possessed from 1985 to 1987. If you're not a metal fan, just know that Possessed is a quintessential 1980 American death and thrash metal band and is very important to the evolution of brutal death metal. Larry has also collaborated with Serge Tonkin of System of a Down fame and longtime Primus favorite, Tom Waits. Green Naugahyde. Green Naugahyde was Primus's first album of new music since Anti-Pop in 1999. It had been over 12 years since a new Primus album had been released, and with the band's hiatus in 2000, many were afraid that the band would not be reuniting. Many were afraid that there would not be a full reunion. This album
Soda pops and whipped cream. I'm glad to kick you down the green. Just coat your credit with Vaseline and shove it up your ass.
Too Many Puppies. Too Many Puppies was the first song ever written by Les Claypool. The song was first played live in 1987 and would become one of the singles from 1990's Frizzle Fry. This song is an anti-war ballad, playing on the idea of dogs of war really being puppies of war since soldiers are merely children. There was a music video in the works for this song, but it was scrapped and would not be released until the DVD Animals Should Not Try to Act Like People in 2003. Level 3. As we get into level 3, we are going to get into more details about the band members and their side projects, and some behind-the-scene facts. Nothing super deep, but this is where things start to get weird and interesting. Suck on This. Suck on This is technically the first album released by Primus in 1989, but since it's a live album, Frizzle Fry is usually noted as being the first. Les Claypool actually sold his car and took a loan out from his father. At the time of the recording, the band had only been playing together for about 2 months. The original liner notes of the album give hugs and kisses to a number of bands and local businesses, including Faith No More and Buck Naked and the Bare Bottom Boys. This is followed by a special hugs and kisses to early Primus members Ted Huth, Jay Lane, Vince Parker, and Tim Wright, and Pops, who is Claypool's father, for kicking down the corn, whatever that means. This album included songs that would later become popular hits on future studio albums, such as John the Fisherman and Tommy the Cat. Primus and the Chocolate Factory with the Fungi Ensemble. Primus and the Chocolate Factory with the Fungi Ensemble was the 8th Primus studio album and was released in 2014 following the Green Naugahyde album. This album is a cover/reimagining of the entire soundtrack of 1971 Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Claypool had an obsession with this movie and wanted to reimagine it from a Primus frame of mind. I actually really love how creepy the covers for Good Luck Charlie and Candyman are, And I actually performed Candyman as a burlesque number where I did fake heroin on stage. Because that's what I imagine this version of the song being about. The tour for this album was super cool and included Willy Wonka theming, not only in the costumes, but also for the sets. To promote the album, the band would come out with chocolate bars that they would sell at shows alongside the regular merch. The flavors of these chocolate bars included Mr. Crinkle bars, pork soda bars, Professor Nutter Butter bars. Oh no, excuse me, Professor Nut Butter bars, and Bastard bars. I would kill to have one of these bars displayed in my room, and I might even take a bite out of it. Just kidding. I wouldn't unwrap it. I've been looking for listings of these chocolate bars on eBay, but I really can't afford that right now. But if I get my hands on one, I will do a video of me like showing it off, because it's seriously one of the coolest like merch ideas from a band. Primus name origin. And yes, my hair and makeup is a little bit different because I am recording this on a different day. Sorry if that's jarring. As mentioned before, the original band name for Primus was Primate. And they had to change this name by request of the label. They had to change this name by request of the record executives for the label they were working for, and this was because there was already a band with the name Primate in the Bay Area music scene. Primus then chose the name. The reason the name Primus was chosen was because this is the Latin root word of primate. Woodstock 1994. Primus was one of the bands that would play at the Woodstock 94 Music Festival, along with Red Hot Chili Peppers, Metallica, Nine Inch Nails, Green Day, and even Bob Dylan. There had been a lot of rain the day before their performance, and so the outdoor venue was covered in mud. As soon as they started playing the opening riff for My Name is Mud, the audience began pelting the band with mud. And I don't mean just a little bit of mud. There was mud everywhere. It was getting into the equipment, probably damaging the amps. And if I was one of the band members, I would have been pissed about this. A minute into the song, the band stopped playing and Les Claypool said, "Wow.
Boy, I opened a big-ass can of worms with that one, didn't I? The song is called My Name is Mud. But keep the mud to yourself, you son of a bitch."
Another notable moment from the band's set list was during their performance of Herald of the Rocks from the Frizzle Fry album. Larry Cantrell from the band Alice in Chains joined the band for their performance. Band lineup changes. The lineup of Primus band members has changed a lot since 1986. Les Claypool is the only member to be in every single lineup. So here is a little breakdown of the lineup history. For the current members, we have Les Claypool, who has been around from 1984 to 2000, and then 2003 to present day. And Larry Lalonde, who has been around since 1989 to 2000, and then 2003 to current day. As for former members, we have Todd Huth, who was in the band from 1984 to 1989, and then Vince Parker, who was in the band just in 1984. We have Peter Libby, who was in the band from 1984 to 1986. And we have Tim Curveball Wright, who was in the band from 1986 to 1988. Jay Lane would be in the band from 1985 to 1989, and then again from 2010 to 2013. Brains was in the band during 1989 and then 1995 to the year 2000. Tim Herb Alexander was in the band from 1989 to 1996 and then again in 2005 to 2010 and then again 2013 to 2024, where he is now just retired from the band. As for former touring members, we have DJ Disc, who did turntables for the band from 1995 to 1999. Buckethead, who did guitars during 1999 on their anti-pop tour. And then Danny Carey, who filled in for drums in 2014. Miscellaneous debris. Primus has released a couple EPs that consist only of cover songs. Miscellaneous Debris included a cover of Pink Floyd's Have a Cigar, as well as a cover of Intruder by Peter Gabriel. This EP, along with Rhinoplasty, are not held in high regard among fans. Les Claypool solo career. Les Claypool has done an incredible amount of side projects, but most of them have been collaborations with friends or people who have played with Primus in the past. The most solo of any of his side projects is probably Les Claypool and the Holy Mackerel presents Highball with the Devil. For this project, he played drums, bass, guitar, and did the vocals. There are other people who did work on the production of this album, however, such as Les Claypool also released a solo album where he played all of the instruments called Wales and Woe, which included the song Robot Chicken, which Claypool made for the theme song for the show. Grammy nominations. When you think of Primus, mainstream awards like the Grammys probably don't come to mind. But they've actually had 3 Grammy nominations with no wins, unfortunately. First, in 1996, Wynona's Big Brown Beaver would receive a Grammy nomination for Best Hard Rock Performance. Larry Lalonde would be the only one to attend this ceremony, and they would unfortunately lose out to Pearl Jam for Spin the Black Circle. They would also get a nomination for Best Surround Sound Album for their deluxe remaster of Sailing the Seas of Cheese in 2013, and for their Primus and the Chocolate Factory with the Fungi Ensemble album in 2015. I didn't see anything about if the bands attended either of these ceremonies, but I kind of assume they did not. Hiatus. Primus would go on hiatus in 2000 to 2003. And while this was called a hiatus, according to the band members, this was really more of the group breaking up. Claypool had been dissatisfied with anti-pop and had been in a bit of a creative lull. Quote, "The end of the 90s was an unhappy Primus camp. I hit a creative stagnation that wasn't helping us move forward. And the personal elements. It just was time to stop. And I had been asked for so many years, how long can Primus go on? And I always said, I'll do it until it's not fun anymore. And it just wasn't fun anymore on many different levels. The word that we used at the time was hiatus, but we had broken up. We were not talking, and there were a lot of hard feelings." During this hiatus, all of the members ended up doing their own side projects, which I will get into for individual entries. In 2003, the band reconvened to make the Animals Should Not Try to Act Like People DVD, which included music videos, live performances, as well as extra features like a fake documentary. The band would do occasional performances and put out a best of album, They Can't All Be Singers. However, it was more of a nostalgia thing than the band really coming back together. It would be until 2011 when Primus would really be officially back. Unfortunately, by then, Herb Alexander wasn't interested in continuing, and this was respected by the band. Jay Lane would end up replacing him, who had been a member in the earlier days of the band. Genre classifications. Music fans love classifying genre and subgenres. especially rock fans. So it should be no surprise that with a band like Primus with so many different influences and untraditional aesthetic choices, that many fans are very passionate about describing what genre Primus fits into. Funk, funk metal, psychedelic funk, bastard funk, alternative metal, alternative prog, and experimental, just to name a few genres that have been used to describe Primus. However, on iTunes, they have their own classification of genre that's just called Primus. Dark song subjects. Primus songs are often as dark as they are silly. Bob is about sewer slide. Jilly's on Smack is about heroin addiction. John the Fisherman ends with John dying in a boat sinking. Jerry is a race car driver, ends with Jerry drunk driving and wrapping his car around a telephone pole. And the darkest of all, DMV, is about being at the DMV. Level 4. Level 4 is when things start to get weirder, darker, and more obscure. Buckethead. Buckethead is an iconic guitar player and all-around weirdo. He's most famous for his solo career and his stage character, where he wears a Michael Myers mask and a KFC chicken bucket on his head. Honestly, I'm a huge Buckethead fan and could do an iceberg on him alone. But it is no surprise that Buckethead is friends and collaborators with Les Claypool. The Venn diagram you can make of Primus fans and Buckethead fans is probably pretty close to just being a circle. The two musicians are big fans of each other. Claypool has helped out on Bucket's album Monsters and Robots, which includes the song Ballad of Buckethead that tells the lore of Buckethead and has vocals done by Les Claypool. They also work together in the supergroup Colonel Claypool's Bucket of Bernie Brains Tribute to Kings tour. Rush has been a big influence for Les Claypool. There haven't been that many bands with leading vocalists who also play bass, and you can really see Geddy Lee's prog influence over Les Claypool's aesthetic. On the debut album, A Frizzle Fry, Claypool plays an excerpt of the bass riff from YYZ from their Moving Picture album. Tragically, Rush's drummer Neil Peart would pass away in 2020. Making the future of Rush uncertain. In 2022, Primus announced their Tribute to Kings tour, where, after a 9-song setlist including These Damn Blue-Collar Tweakers and Shake Hands with Beef, they would play the Rush album A Farewell to Kings in its entirety. This was a tribute to Neil Peart and the band as a whole. Claypool even did all of Geddy Lee's keyboard parts from the album, which is super impressive to me. And then, after doing 2 sets, the band would do a 4-song encore. I'm really sad that I missed this tour when it came through in Denver. I think the opener for the band was Wolfmother and the Sword, which 13-year-old me would have been so excited for. Colonel Les Claypool's Fearless Flying Frog Brigade. The Les Claypool Frog Brigade, for short, was formed during the Primus hiatus as a side project for Les Claypool to focus on. It featured a few Primus band members throughout different lineups, including Todd Huth and Jay Lane. This was mostly a jam band who released 2 live albums and 1 studio album. Bernie Worrell and Brain would also collaborate with this group. Blind Illusion. When I say that Les Claypool is the Forrest Gump of late 80s to 90s metal alternative rock music, I mean it. Blind Illusion was a prog thrash metal band that was formed in 1978 at the De Anza High School, which Les Claypool and Kirk Hammett of Metallica were alumni of. Les Claypool would play bass for the band early on, and Larry Lalonde would play backing guitar on one of the first demos, which was produced by Kirk Hammett. Claypool and Lair weren't members for very long, but would return a few times for live performances. It's just crazy to think about all of the interconnecting pieces of rock history that came together from this band that was formed in a random high school in Southern California. The Beavis and Butthead Experience. Beavis and Butthead Experience was a compilation album of popular music interlaid with commentary from the two cartoon characters. The 8th song on this album was the Primus track, Poetry and Prose. Lacquerhead Band. Music video for Lacquerhead was banned from being played on MTV for being too controversial, despite it being an anti-drug message. The video was seen as too disturbing and was seen as glamorizing drugs somehow, which if you have watched the music video, I'll probably have it played over my audio. No, there's nothing glamorous about doing inhalants, but thank you, MTV, for looking out. Nativity in Black cover. Primus did an NIB cover with Ozzy Osbourne doing vocals. I just think this is super neat. The Nativity in Black bass riff is so iconic, and it really makes sense for Primus to cover it. I love a crossover between two of my favorite bands. Colonel Claypool's Bucket of Bernie Brains. Colonel Claypool's Bucket of Bernie Brains, or C2B3 for short, is one of Les Claypool's spin-off projects. For this band, Claypool would play bass and do the vocals. Buckethead would be on guitars, and Bernie Worrell from Parliament Funkadelic fame would do the keyboards. And last of all, Brains would be on the drums. This supergroup released one album in 2004, The Big Eyeball in the Sky, which included a track that expanded on the lore of the Buckethead character. The band started after all of the members met at 2002 Bonnaroo, and Claypool invited Bernie Worrell and Buckethead to jam with him, and it turned into the supergroup that it became. The live shows were mostly improvisational, since this was Claypool's jam band era, and at one show they made sandwiches to give out to the audience. Primus, Over the Electric Grapevine, Insight into Primus and the World of Les Claypool. This is a 2014 book written by Greg Preto in assistance with the band members. It covers the history of Primus and has interviews with people like Tom Waits. Interestingly enough, Les Claypool has written a few books himself. In 2006, he released a fiction novella, which was called South of the Pump House. This book has themes of drugs, murder, and fishing. Pork soda. Claypool explained that the term pork soda was meant to refer to how he viewed Primus. He viewed it as a band that, in his eyes, wasn't suitable for radio play. It was an acquired taste, kind of like a meat-flavored soda would be. Brown Album. Regarding the name of the album, Claypool said, "This is a milestone record for Primus, and I needed a milestone title. The Beatles have the White Album, Metallica has their Black Album, and now Primus has their Brown Album." According to Brain, the reason it's called the Brown Album was because of the way the band approached the recording session. The mixes were done in the most unconventional ways that sounded like a muffled turd, hence the album title. According to Claypool, this is Tom Waits' favorite Primus album because it sounds like it needs a good wash. Anti-pop production drama ended the band. The 1999 album Anti-Pop features a bunch of guest musicians and producers that include Tom Waits, James Hetfield from Metallica, Jim Martin, a former member of Faith No More, Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit, and Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine. Apparently, Fred Durst was a very big Primus fan and wanted Les to go back to his more aggressive sound of the earlier albums. The production
I don't know if it opened so many doors as much as it changed people's perception. because
the band members
all
were
of a
not
sudden
really
what we
getting
were,
along during
what
this
we had
period.
been a part of
Claypool
became
has
this
stated,
thing where
quote,
guys are running around with
"Anti-pop was the
baseball
most
caps turned
difficult record
sideways
we
and,
ever made
you know,
because
baggy
there was a
dickies,
lot
and
of
it just
tension
was,
between
it had
the three
become
of
this
us.
thing that
And
was just
there
not very
was
appealing
some
to
doubt
me,
at the
and it was
label
more
as to
about
whether
image
we
than it
knew
was about
what the hell we were
content,
doing
and you know, we were getting this,
But
hey, all
there
these
were
bands
some
that you
great
influenced
things
are
to come
becoming
out
way
of
bigger than you. What's
like
going
the
on? You need
tune we did
to
with
step
Tom
up your
Waits,
game or whatever. We were getting this
Tales of the
pressure.
Dead Man.
And
I love that
so when
song.
Primus finally
And
just
in
fell
this
apart,
interview, Claypool goes on to
all of a
explain
sudden,
that
you know, I
the
did
song
these,
is
I had done the
about
Oysterhead thing,
husband
so I was asked to put together a
suffering from
project for Mountain
substance
Air
abuse,
Festival,
when
and it ended up
he
being
tries to get comfort
Tim,
from his
Herb,
wife
and
and
Jack
doesn't
Irons, who's a
receive it,
fabulous
he
player,
ends up
and
his
on
own
two
life.
drummers, and then
And
Merv, and then
instead of
Scarrett
grieving,
came and played.
the wife
And
decides to
it was this amazing thing. All these people were there, and they were excited to see what we were doing. And I remember
off
having
of
this
the
epiphany,
band's
like
death.
this is
They
what
said that
this is
song
what
is
it's
about
about.
Britney
You're
Love,
playing music.
although
Doesn't
none
matter
of
whether
the
I have
Primus
a
members have
red
confirmed
baseball cap on
or
turned
denied
backwards
it.
or whatever the you know,
I think
has
they could
nothing
make
to do with
another
it.
iceberg
You know,
just
the
about
image
all
has
of the,
nothing to do with it. It's all about the
very
music.
mean
And
songs
people were
that have been
excited to
written
see us
about
take
Britney
chances,
Love.
and it didn't have to be this polished thing.
Justified or not.
And it really opened my eyes.
After
and,
the release of the album,
I
the
bought
band
this
went
old
on a
Airstream
3-year
motorhome
hiatus
and
from
fixed it up
2000
and
to
loaded it with
2003.
all my favorite guys,
Claypool
Jayski
said,
being one of
quote,
them,
"We went
and
on
Jeff
hiatus,
Chimenti,
which
and
is a
Todd Huth,
fancy
the old
way of
Primus
saying
guitar
we
player,
just
and
didn't like
Enor. I
being
found
around each
Enor
other.
on Craigslist,
And we wanted to
and
break up,
Scarrick,
but we didn't have
and
the
just
balls
drove up
to
and down the
actually
West
do
Coast
it.
playing
I
little
think we
bars and
stopped
staying,
before
sharing
we totally
motel
shut
rooms, not
hands.
hotel rooms.
But I think
It was
the
back to the
closest
trenches
we
again,
ever
and it was one of the
came was
funnest
doing
times of my life. I was coming out of this.
Level 5. On the remaster of Frizzle Fry, there is an extra hidden track where Primus covers the songs Hello Skinny and Constantinople by The Residents. The Residents were a 1970s art collective that made art rock, along with other art mediums. I personally love The Residents. They are an absurdist amalgamation of surrealism, Dada, and pop art, and they honestly deserve a video on their own. I had never heard of this band before listening to Frizzle Fry for the first time, and I remember being really unsettled by Hello Skinny and went to the internet to learn more about The Residents, and then fell down a wide rabbit hole about the band. I think that's one of the reasons that I just absolutely love Primus, is all of the weird, bizarre, obscure media that they use in their work that you're not really going to find referenced elsewhere. Me Llamo Mud. Me Llamo Mud is a Spanish version of My Name is Mud and was released in 2010 as a single. According to Spanish speakers, the diction isn't very good and the Spanish used is a little too formal. So it makes for an overall weird vibe for the song. If you're like me and you don't know Spanish, I really enjoy this version. Shake Hands with Beef. The meaning of this song comes from one of Les Claypool's friends who was vegetarian. Les Claypool said that anytime this friend would start eating meat again, that his excuse was he needed to shake hands with beef. Hi guys, so in the middle of editing this video, I realized that at some point the audio just stops syncing up with my mouth. Which is super frustrating, and it's gonna make it really hard to edit. So I'm really sorry. I'm probably not gonna refilm it because I just spent like 2.5 hours filming this video to begin with, and I just don't have the time to redo it and upload it in time. So I'm probably gonna have different visuals to go over it. But for when you do see me talking, I apologize that it looks like I'm in a 1970s Hong Kong English dub movie. Tales from the Punch Bowl CD-ROM. So in 1996, they re-released the Tales from the Punch Bowl album and turned it into an interactive, kind of like a visual novel with music. I wouldn't call it a video game. It's kind of hard to describe, so I'm just going to read off what the back of the CD says that this album is. On the back of the CD, it says, combining high-end production values, 3D graphics, spectacular effects, and loads of insanely cool stuff, the Tales from the Punch Bowl enhanced CD, played on a CD-ROM drive, sends the viewer through a surreal, virtual experience that features the complete album in CD sound quality, which you can hear on a stereo CD player as well. Players must navigate from the helm of Captain Shiner's ferry boat through an enchanted liquid atmosphere to many strange and mysterious islands. Many experiences are to be had, all in a rose-colored water world filled with visuals reminiscent of Dolly and Bosch. I think that the idea of an interactive album, video game, visual experience, or whatever you could call the CD-ROM, is a really cool idea, and it really kind of shows just what people were thinking in 1996. Blame It on the Fish. Blame It on the Fish was a mockumentary that came out in 2006 and is described as an abstract version of Primus's 2003 Tour de Fromage. This is a fake documentary about the tour, and it becomes very weird and abstract, showing the tour from the band's perspective, but really from the perspective of the band as a character concept, if that makes sense. There is a lot of live footage from the tour as well as some interviews, and on the special features of the DVD, there is a history of the band that is meant to take place in 2065, reflecting on the history of the band and speculations of what will happen to it in the future. Snowcore Tour 1998. The Snowcore Tour is a really interesting festival tour idea that I had never heard of before doing research for this video. This was a yearly tour from 1995 to 2015 and would start every December. The idea for the tour was to combine extreme winter sports like snowboarding with alternative music. For this tour, they would mainly go to mountain resort towns like Vail or Aspen. I couldn't find a poster with the actual cities listed for the 1998 tour, but Primus was the headliner on this tour along with Blink-182. And one of my all-time faves, the Aquabats. Sausage. In 1993, the original Primus members from the 1988 lineup, Les Claypool, Todd Huth, and Jay Lane, would reunite to record an album and play some live shows. This project only lasted for a single year, but they have reunited to do some live shows as Sausage again in 2019. Michael Malloy. The seventh track from the Frizzle Fry album is an excerpt of a Spent Poet song, You Can't Kill Michael Malloy. Michael Malloy is a super interesting story about an Irishman born in 1870. A group of his friends plotted to kill him for an insurance scam. They tried this by poisoning Michael's alcohol, since he was a known drunkard. But Malloy was able to survive this poisoning and actually asked for more alcohol. Like, this man could throw it back, and by throw it back, I mean poison. He would end up murdering him by hand after a couple failed attempts that included running him over with a taxi, and since it was quite obvious that he was murdered, they didn't get that insurance money. Stop doing insurance scams. They're really hard to pull off. Not that I've ever done one, but I'm sure they're hard to pull off, so don't do insurance scams, y'all. Les Claypool's wife in the Mr. Crinkle video. In the music video for Mr. Crinkle from the Pork Soda album, Claypool is wearing a pig costume and tuxedo, playing upright bass in an abandoned warehouse as a carnival of oddities are seen in the background. Claypool's wife, Cheney, and her twin sister are seen skipping rope together as conjoined twins. First, demo. The first ever Primus demo was in 1986 and was titled Sucking Songs. It's basically a prototype of the Suck on This album that would come later. This demo featured songs that would become very popular later on, such as Tommy the Cat, Sergeant Baker, and Welcome to This World. It's really crazy to hear such an early version of Tommy the Cat where Les does the spoken character bit instead of Tom Waits. Oysterhead. Oysterhead was yet another supergroup that Les Claypool was a part of. This was a psychedelic jam band that would include Stuart Copeland from the Police on drums, Trey Anastasio on Fish on guitar, and they released one studio album as well as 2 live albums. An interesting thing about the Oysterhead tours is that they were interrupted by 2 major events. First, the 9/11 attacks for their 2011 tour, and then again for their 2020 revival tour, where it would be interrupted by the Claypool-Lennon Delirium. This is yet another Claypool side project. It is a psychedelic rock group with Sean Ono Lennon and the drummer from Cake. As of now, they have 2 albums released and 1 EP. Level 6. Now we are making it to the bottom layer of the iceberg. These are things that are really random and obscure, and I had to dig through a lot of sources and information to find these topics. Rainbow Goblins. The Rainbow Goblins is a children's book written by Ol DeRico about colorful goblins that try to steal the rainbow. Apparently, this was a book that Les Claypool would read to his children, and it's where he got the idea for his 2017 album, The Desaturating Seven. Art from this book is even used on the album cover. I highly recommend looking up this book because the art is super weird and it's gorgeous. This is just like a random thing to find out that this album was based on a children's book. And of course, Les Claypool would read a book about goblins stealing the rainbow to his children. I stole the rainbow once, but I had to give it back because Elton John got really angry at me. Les Claypool's Winery. Les Claypool makes wine. The Claypool cellars make Pinot Noir, Pinot Noir Rosé, and Champagne, all grown in Southern California. The wines are called Purple Pachyderm, and they have the cutest little baby elephant on the label of the bottle. They even have a tasting room in Sebastopol, California, that is an old boat repair shop, and it's super cute. I haven't tried any of their wine, but I will consider getting my hands on some. I don't even like wine, but I just really like the little elephant label. It's so cute. Primus Pinball. Out of all of the possible Primus merch, the Primus Pinball machine is probably the coolest. Only 100 of these packages remain. Combos, special needs were for this game. I would please any local Colorado arcade spend the $8,000 so that I can play Electric Apricot Quest for Festaroo. This is a 2007 mockumentary directed by Les Claypool about a fictional jam band called Electric Apricot and its journey playing various festivals. Les Claypool also stars in the mockumentary, and the cast includes Seth Green, who he became friends with by doing the theme song for Robot Chicken. Trans references. So this is a bit of a throwaway joke entry, but I have this theory that Claypool is trying to tell us something about trans women. I don't know if he is chasing the dolls or an ally, but there are several references to trans women throughout his songs. First, as I had mentioned earlier, at the end of Wynona's Big Brown Beaver, he makes a reference to the idea that Wynona might have a porcupine instead of a beaver, which could be taken as the opposite, so Wynona has a penis. And in the song Pork Soda, the song ends in a weird ramble where Les Claypool says, well, maybe it's something simpler, like your team lost or your girlfriend used to be a guy. You know? I don't know. I think there's a couple more references that I couldn't find, but I like the idea that he's just secretly a really big fan of the dolls. I know logically that these references don't actually mean anything, and they're just Frank Zappian edgy humor, and that's probably why they're not in the later songs, because it's more of like a 90s less PC thing, but in my heart I know that Les Claypool fucks with the dolls. 1984 Primate demo. While I said that Sucking Songs was the first Primus demo, it doesn't mean that it was the band's first demo. In 1984, while the band was still under the name Primate, they recorded a demo. And I couldn't find an official name of what this demo tape is called, but it's usually under the name Frankie's Tapes, and it includes the songs Prelude to Fear and Chattering Song. Bill and Ted's Bogus Adventure. Tommy the Cat was featured on the soundtrack of Bill and Ted's Bogus Adventure in 1991, and the band made a cameo in the film as a live band playing in the background of a party scene. Rancho Relaxo. Rancho Relaxo is a property owned by
What's the ranch called? Rancho Relaxo.
You know, every time there's
all of the albums
I've taken
after Pork Soda
any type of
were
camera crew out on the boat, we
Rancho
never catch anything.
Relaxo.
Really?
Yeah.
And
Well, maybe I'm good luck.
Because
I'm
I hope
new.
so.
You got the-
You got the fancy outfit, so I think that'll bring us luck.
So now, okay, so I hear that you always throw the fish back.
Of course. They're my children.
The name
But
Rancho
don't they get hurt?
Relaxo
Nah.
is a reference to
Makes them wiser.
a Simpsons episode.
Do you eat fish?
Tim Herb Alexander played in the Blue Man Group. Tim Alexander, or Herb, as he was nicknamed because he liked to carry ginseng in his fanny pouch. It's so cute and such an annoying look thing to do. But anyway, he was a really interesting member of Primus. He was the drummer for the majority of the Primus discography, and he was even part of the band The Circle. But the weirdest part of his career is during the 2002-2003 Primus hiatus, he decided to join the Blue Man Group. I couldn't find any pictures of Tim in blueface, unfortunately, but I promise that I searched for a long time. Praxis. I'm so excited to talk about this experimental rock band. And for once, this is not one of Les Claypool's side projects and is instead one of Brain's side projects. This band had Brains alongside Primus' favorite Buckethead. This band also features heavy hitters such as Bootsy Collins, of all people, who plays bass and does a lot of the vocals for the tracks. And Bernie Morrell from Parliament, and earlier Colonel Claypool's Bucket of Burning Brains, which we talked about earlier. This band also included very famous guest collaborators like Serge Tonkin, Mike Patton, Iggy Pop, and Maxim Bob. And no, Maxim Bob is not that famous, but I just wanted an excuse to bring up the Deli Creeps because I am a really big fan of the Deli Creeps, and you should look it up. If you're a little buckethead, they're cheese coordinator. Mick Core is credited as cheese coordinator for the album Sailing the Seas of Cheese. This is referring to his work on the album art, which includes a ship being rocked around in seas of cheese and a weird like octopus thing looking on in the distance. And I think it's all made out of clay. I just thought it was really interesting that among the credits of this album, they had a cheese coordinator. I can't think of any other time where someone's going to be credited as a cheese coordinator. Maybe one day I'll be a cheese coordinator. I would love to coordinate everybody's cheese. And we have made it to our last entry of level 6. Les Claypool III. Les E. Claypool III is an anime sound engineer that has worked on projects like Perfect Blue and the Cowboy Bebop movie. He is completely unrelated to Les Claypool of Primus, but he does, to me, kind of resemble him in that crunchy old white man archetype of he could either be your funky uncle or your optometrist. I don't know. I just see men like this and I think of either a funky uncle, a funkle, if you will, or someone that touches your braces. It makes sense to me. Bonus Reddit entry round. So that was all for the iceberg that I put together myself, but I have a little bonus round for everybody. Woo! Yeah! Whoa! Yay. So, while I was putting together this iceberg, I was finishing up and I went to Reddit to see if anyone had any weird things that I could add or anything that I might have missed. And I ended up getting a pretty big response. Shout out to r/Primus. It's a pretty active fan community, and I have a lot of respect for the people who post there. Now, a lot of these I had already included into my iceberg, and then some of them were just way too hard to research, so I decided to just include it as a bonus round rather than fit them into my iceberg. Here are 4 entries from Reddit user u/Musabi that I found pretty interesting and was able to find some background sources on. The bong incident. During the recording sessions for Frizzle Fry, Les Claypool said that he smoked out of the biggest bong he had ever seen and he spilled it all over the mixing board and just totally ruined the equipment. And the source for this was the Over the Electric Grapevine assisted biography book. Kirk Hammett was in John the Fisherman music video. Kirk Hammett of Metallica fame, as we've talked about many times throughout this iceberg, big friends of Les Claypool, he's actually seen in the John the Fisherman music video as one of John's fishing buddies, which I did not know. So thanks for pointing that out. Dan's a Jig is about Claypool's former classmates. The characters Flouncin' Freddy, Todd Squiletti, Julie Tolentino, the dancing Filipino, and Jenny Hernanda are all characters based on real people that Les Claypool went to high school with. I don't know if I would feel honored to be included in that song, because he is kind of calling a few of them whores and drug addicts and losers. But I think it would be pretty cool to be called a slut by Claypool. He can call me a slut. It's fine. And lastly, the complete, swear to God, last entry of this video. Les and Larry were on acid during the 1992 MTV performance. During the 1992 MTV Spring Break show in Daytona Beach that was broadcasted live, Les Claypool said that he was very high on acid. Apparently, Claypool and Lair didn't want to do the show and thought it was totally cheesy, but the band was forced into it by their record label. So, in frustration, him and Larry decided to drop acid. In an interview about this gig, Les said, quote, "When you're watching us on that thing, everything I saw was just orange, just bright orange. And I remember talking to Pauly Shore. He's like, 'Hey, buddy.' And I was like, 'What the hell's going on here?' And we met the Cypress Hill guys, and it ended up being a pretty fun thing." So that is it for this iceberg video. Thank you so much if you made it to the end of this. This is probably going to be my longest video. other than my Let's Plays. And I put a lot of work into it, and I'm really proud of it. So thank you. If you watched, please like and subscribe. If you have any other interesting Primus facts that you think I might have missed, please comment below. I would love to hear about them. But with that, good night, goodbye, and good luck. I'm Dead Girl.